morning, Lucy.
Good morning. Actually, we're in the afternoon just.
Oh, just by saying. So good afternoon, Lucy. The first person I've spoke to this afternoon.
Yes, you're the first person I've spoken to this afternoon.
And today, how are you? What's happening in Hambledon?
What is happening here? All my children are in bed. And I don't
Back
know,
shift homeschooling?
they turned totally nocturnal. They sort
Really?
of about 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Wow.
And then, we all go out for a walk, cook, and then I go to bed, and then they do whatever they do. I don't know what they do. Then I get up in the morning and the kitchen is like, there's stuff everywhere.
How are they managing homeschooling?
Not a lot of, well, one of them's in what I call lower sit because I'm very old, but I think it's called year 12 well, not in Scotland maybe, but
No.
here, year 12. So he's the year before A level. So
Right.
he's fine. He's doing it himself. And of course, because it's a modern connected world, they do a lot of sharing, lessons online and sharing with his
Yeah.
peer group, and he's doing that. My other son had his GCSEs, so he's not doing them. He's delighted.
You've been cancelled.
Oh, couldn't be happy. I would set up the books, right? So he's so happy. And my daughter's year 8, and her theory is nothing much happens in year 8. So she's spending a lot of time doing lots of other things. So we went outside our house, a stream has appeared. It hasn't appeared. When I first moved here 20 years ago, which is that long since I've lived where I live, there was a stream outside the house and it ran every year and it was lovely. And we used to go and play in it and do duck races with little plastic ducks and picnics, and then it dried up, completely dried up. And I used to tell stories of the stream outside the house, and the kids were like, because it was only my eldest son, who's 23, who remembers it, who's also here with us. And they just started making it up. And this year, it's there. And I've just seen a duck.
Flowing.
It's flowing, and it's flowing fast. I've just seen a duck
Oh, lovely.
past, a real life duck. Just went,
Lovely.
past the window.
Oh, goodness.
And the man that owns the field, who's a lovely man, has just said to everybody, just use it. Anyone wants to use it, play in the stream, use it for picnics, walk the dogs. And it's there. So it's really beautiful. So she spends a lot of time out there, and there's a bit where it gets quite, not stagnant. Well, it is a bit stagnant, but she's found newts and frogs. And
Oh, how lovely. Childhood.
yeah, she spends a lot of time photographing them and then logging them and watching them, and generally she's really interested in what's happening in this stagnancy bit.
Mm-hmm.
So all the newts have names,
Good for her.
so she goes and does newt watch. So as far as I'm concerned, that's fine. I don't quite know what lesson that is, but it's.
You get any dragonflies? The little blue.
Yeah, we do. We get bats, swallows. The swallow, I saw one. The swallows are here. Swallows, swifts, lots of badgers, lots of foxes. And when they were little, I used to make them put on head torches and go out at night to look at it. But then,
what childhood should be.
We're very lucky. We live here.
What childhood should be. So how are you noticing life in lockdown in Hambledon?
Well, I go to the local farm shop to get the vegetables and things, and up until this weekend, it's been pretty empty. They have a nursery next door for flowers and seeds and plants that's also open, quite big. It's grown in size. This weekend, I went to get some food, and it was packed. Whereas before, it's been really empty. And people have been, quite keeping distance. I didn't go into the gardeny bit, but I could see it was absolutely packed. People were standing right next to each other. So I think something's shifting. In terms of how people are. I think people feel they've done their nearly 4 weeks. Well, 4 weeks, I think, today, actually.
Yeah.
4 weeks. I imagine. So there's quite a lot of this going on, which is, well, I haven't got. This is what I've heard people say. So my friend had she had people over for the weekend, like her children, and I was a bit like, oh, that feels a bit rebellious. I mean, how are you managing that? She said, well, they've been in lockdown, I've been in lockdown, so it feels quite safe. And I think that's where we're getting to, which is people thinking, well, I've been in lockdown for 4 weeks and I don't have it, or I've had it, or whatever. And my friend, mother, whatever, has also been in lockdown. And so consequently, now it's been 4 weeks, we're okay to see each other.
Mm.
That's
Or is it the rebel?
sorry.
Or is it the rebel?
It's also the rebel. It's also kind of like, well, yeah, I think there's a rebellious element to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think, yes, so a bit of I'm not going to be told what to do by, them, the government.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
think, as we all know, it's been pretty poorly managed. So none of us have a particular idea of what's actually happening. So when they say things like, it now turns out that because we've done lockdown, one person will only infect less than another person. I can't remember what the rate's called, the transmission rate. But given the fact there's no testing, really, I don't know how anyone knows what that rate is.
Exactly.
So actually, I think none of us actually know anything very much.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people, including myself, the reality of it feels removed. I don't actually know anyone that's had it, or if they have had it, they haven't had it bad enough to go to hospital. They haven't been on a ventilator, or they haven't died from it. And I don't think anyone in the village I've lived in has had it, or at least, recognizably bad. So I think there's also an element of thinking, well, maybe it's not that bad. It doesn't feel real. And I
Yeah.
think people want to start going out and getting back to some form of life that feels normal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's going to have implications as well, though.
Uh,
Yeah.
yes, it will have ramifications. I'm not a scientist, and I think I'm really interested in the way that people have very different reactions to it.
Yeah.
Some people are very, very, very anxious and very terrified and very frightened and are really washing everything and not going out and having everything delivered. And some people are much more laissez-faire about it, which is, well, I probably will get it, but I'm, relatively young and I'm fit and I'm healthy and I've got to die of something.
Mm-hmm.
I can't spend the rest of my life sitting here in abject fear, being terrified of everything I can't see, I can't get tested for, I don't know what the treatment is.
Yeah.
And so I'm just going to sort of make some form of decision around how I live my life now. And it may be I go out a bit more. It may be that I go and see my mother. I don't know. That sort of.
And many people are tackling the homeschooling. They're tackling it very differently. Lots of people are doing it very rigorously, by
Yeah.
the book, regimented, and other people have a lot more of a loose approach to it.
I think that's a huge issue, actually, the homeschooling. I think because I have an opinion, okay, given that I've got a platform and I'm allowed to be a bit radical, I genuinely feel that our educational system that I know. And my kids are at state school, okay? So before, they're at state school, they're not at fee-paying school. Um, so I can't talk about what happens in the private school system because I don't know. But a lot of what they're taught feels completely archaic. They're kind of doing text that I did, and I'm billions of years older than they are. And
Exactly.
it just feels me that the whole thing needs a complete and utter overhaul.
Mm.
They're disenchanted, and they're at a great school. That my local state school's a great school. It's not about the school. The school's teaching the curriculum, and they're doing it to the best of their ability to a huge range of pupils with all sorts of different skills. And they do a really, really good job of it. It's it's a great school. It's very inclusive, and they're very happy there. But actually, I feel this is. I don't have an attachment to getting them up and getting them to sit down and work through. Whatever. Actually, I'd rather that they went and decided what they want to learn and how they want to learn. And
Yep.
each kid, everyone learns very. my daughter is not academic. It's just does nothing for her, you know. She's creative and she's a visual learner and she likes to learn by doing things. Sitting in a classroom concentrating on, you know, algebra is not her thing. Never going to be her thing. Um, and in a way, I could see where she's heading right now. I almost feel, you know, if I could, you know, in a way, I can see what she's going to do. So in a way, going to school for her sometimes is like a total waste of time. You know, she's never going to do algebra. She doesn't need to do algebra. You know, she'll go and do something with wildlife. I think that's where she's heading. She's always been like that. She used to
Yeah.
keep, you know, when little animals and that die in the that she'd find, she'd go and put them in the greenhouse and watch them as they decay, you know, and look at their lungs and hearts and things. And people thought it was really macabre, but I was like, but that's what's inside all of us. She was just interested in how do rabbits, you know, breathe and stuff. It is a bit weird. I know it's a bit weird, but there we go.
It's very similar. I've been babysitting my friend's 9-year-old when they've been going off to work, and I've been asking her, "What do you enjoy?" And it's like they look at you like these little eyes, these little 9-year-old eyes, and said, "But you like reading, but school doesn't make it fun."
No, that's right.
I'm like, hmm,
No, that's right. I mean, Shakespeare gets killed, you know, dead, really. Um, so for me, I haven't got primary school aged kids. I'm kind of quite laid back about what they're doing and when they do it and how much they
mhm,
need to do. Um, but I know for a lot of people it's very stressful. And let's really, you know, nail it. Some families find family life quite difficult. We're not used to family life. You know, that whole thing generally, when we all sit together and are together and talk together and try and get on has not been something we've done for a long time, really. And I think parents, especially if everyone's working, I mean, I was thinking the other day, I've cooked so much food. It's like I just, you know, I'm endlessly cooking food. And the kids were like, oh, this is great. You know, what's for dinner? I was like, oh, it's chickpea curry. And tomorrow night, you know, tonight we're doing Catalan fish stew or something. They were like, wow, this is wonderful. Because when I'm working, that's not the level of food that's happening. You know, one of them said, yeah, better than microwave meals. And I was like, well, hang on a minute. I do try and cook and leave food when I'm working so that you don't eat microwave meals. But I can see they're really enjoying that. And then we're
mhm.
together. And of course that's great. But we all need to go out and earn a living. So we've all got to find a balance. I see a lot of teenagers in my practice. And what I find is that quite often what parents would like me to do is take their teen back to the person they were before they were a teenager, you know, in the relatively biddable stage when they were sweet and loving and basically did what they were told.
Yeah,
And a lot of people find the teenage years very, very difficult because it's all about, you know, autonomy for teenagers.
of course.
Teenagers find out who, you know, in a really difficult world, who are they? What are they about? What's important to them? How do they feel about themselves? How do they feel about other people? Um, and actually, quite often, parents are really unimportant to teenagers. They really, I mean, people, you know, they really don't think about parents when they're teenagers. We're just sort of, you know, irritating in the
And we
way.
don't we don't promote well the essence of adolescence,
Yeah.
because it's we look at the risk taking behaviour and we see that as negative, which it is if it's not guided appropriately. But because of our inability to look at our lost essence of adolescence, we
Mm,
repel that as being dangerous, when in actual fact, if that risk taking can be harnessed, it's very entrepreneurial, it's very creative.
fantastic. I mean, I really like teenagers. I really like their energy, and I think I just must be a teenager somewhere along the line. I
I
just
love
find
it.
I remember we were in the street last year, the year before, and it was snowing, and we were just playing snowballs, and a car came past, and they were only snow, and I threw the snowball, and it hit this man's really expensive car, and he pulled up. We all went and ran behind the hedge and hid. He like threw that snowball, and I had to go out and say, Actually, it was me, and he was really furious with me. What kind of a mother are you that you're throwing snowballs? And it was so funny. It was so funny. We just couldn't stop laughing. And the angrier he got, the funnier we found it all. And the kids have always just said, "It's you. You know, you're the one throwing the snowballs." I just think it's funny. Anyway, we're digressing. Where were we supposed to be? We were just talking about. So I also.
Oh, I'm volunteering at the local church, and the minister Louise, she come round with my lanyard and bits and bobs, right? And she said, so when we deliver the food to the elderly, we've just to chat the door and and leave it there. And I was like, so are we allowed to play chat door runaway? I said, I've never played that for years. You know, I don't. It's like, I'll leave it really quick, like bang the door, run down the path.
But I guess and the interesting thing with this is we how to channel that energy to get through all this and then to come out of it the other side. There's a very hopeful, as you say, entrepreneurial energy about adolescents, about teenagers. Yeah, everything. And how can we take that into our lives and think about how we emerge the other side? Because for a lot of people have felt very lonely in this what's happening. I think they found it very lonely experience. And for a lot of people, it's very, people are very worried about their businesses and about their money and how they're going to survive, and what will happen afterwards, really, and how.
Life after lockdown.
Yeah, I mean, I said last time, and I still believe this. I think really within a year, it will go back to where it was.
But you know, you said something really interesting, Lucy, which was, you know, you prepare meals that are nutritional enough for your kids. They don't get microwave meals, but they're not getting Moroccan chickpea curry or, you know, creative meals. So we've and I'm noticing this as well. I'm cooking a lot more and I'm experimenting more, and
Mm.
I don't do that. So they've now started to become used to a new equilibrium of this being their new status quo, their new normal. And then when you go back to work, it goes back to how it was. But there'll be like a broken dream because in that, I'm imagining that in that chickpea curry, there's more of a family feeling, is what they're also picking up on. It's not just the quality of food that they're enjoying, it's the whole cyclical experience around that. And if we're not mindful and we just exit and go back to work, there's going to be a lot of people left wondering and missing, and these broken dreams and the broken unit. Not that the unit was broken, but it feels slightly broken because we've been given a glimpse of inclusion, of joining, of connection that wasn't there before. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I mean, I thought this, but it's a really untrendy, un-PC thing to say, I've
Go for it.
well, no, it really is, and I'll get hung out to dry. I mean, if I say what I feel personally, my kids would be really happy if I was at home, right? I've always been really aware that what they've really, really needed from when they were tiny, tiny, tiny was me really here, or someone, you know, so that when they come home from school, they really like it if they come home from school and I'm here. I might be working, I'm not available to, but I'm here, and they really, really like that, and I can see how much they like it. So they're, and I'm really aware for me that that very firm home base makes them feel that all's right in the world, or at least we'll be okay. And that's
It's,
really important.
it's
Um,
the one solid, it's the anchor.
Sorry.
It's like the anchor, it's the solid.
Yeah. And if that's not possible I see a lot of people whose parents are out to work a lot, with teenagers. And I think we think when they get to teenagers, they can sort themselves out. And of course they can in terms of getting themselves dinner and things. Of course they can. But actually, loads of kids that come home and no one's at home and no one's back till 8 are just incredibly lonely and really rather lost, actually. So I think that what the good thing that can come out of this is this real sense of home and family and being together and doing, that. And it's like a dream. It's like sort of paradise lost. That because I'm here all the time. And if I go out, they come with me. I mean, we're like a pack. We go out for a walk like a pack, and we go to the farm shop like a pack, and that's how it feels. It feels very cohesive. And when I'm working, and I'm working in London, and 2 days a week, and I'm not here 2 evenings a week, and back late, I can see that it feels much more scattered. It feels a lot more. And I think that's the same for lots of families. But of course, we've got to be practical and realistic. So I don't want people to feel guilty because they have to go to work and earn money. I don't want people to say, I've let my children down. But I think it is a moment for pause, because I think there will be that, unless of course you're a child that actually can't stand being with your family, or is suffering. No, is awful. And one thing you do want is to get out. So being locked in an abusive family is just terrifyingly awful to think.
Horrendous. And we don't think, we look so focused on our own landscape that this time is given us time to think about other landscapes. Those, the elderly that can't have anyone visit right now, the elderly that are completely isolated, the women or men that are in abusive relationships right now, or as you said, the relationship has only survived and survived very well because the husband goes out and works day
Yeah.
shift and the wife goes out and works back shift, but it's
Yes.
worked very well. Now that's stopped. What was a functioning family that on the surface worked well because of the way things were, it's not there. And now challenges are starting to arise in relationships. It's so multidimensional.
Yeah. I mean, I do a lot of couples counselling, and I
Mm-hmm.
continue to do a bit online. It's much more difficult online, really, because there's only a certain bit you can see.
Mm-hmm.
And couples, yeah, this is really difficult. Normally we have fantastic exit strategies. Go to the pub, go to an exercise class, go play football, whatever what couples do. Modern day couples are very unused to spending a lot of time together. They're just not something people do generally. And their communication, their ability to communicate with each other is very, very, very damaged or reduced. What's the right word? Sort of broken. Couples generally come to me saying, I mean, I work with couples on connection and communication, regardless of where they end up. I'm not invested in whether they stay together or separate, but I'm invested in the quality of their knowledge and kindness to each other. We all say we want to be kind, and yet we all find it very difficult to do that.
Of course. And you said the communication in couples has became difficult. It's changed somewhat in the years.
Well, I think what we tend to do, and maybe people always did that, we just repeat the same patterns. I mean, I do
Don't we?
couples all the time. So whatever it's like one couple saying we had an argument about matching up socks. It's not about the socks. And I say to them, okay, let's work through what that's actually about. So, but most people find that too difficult. It's excruciatingly painful to get to the bottom of actually what's happening between each other in terms of couples. It's very painful because it's taking you to painful childhood stuff, really.
Of course
You
it is.
know, generally, I say that with a huge sweeping statement, but people, people tend to choose partners that have the qualities, the great qualities of their caregivers, but also exacerbate the wounds. Um,
Yep.
and then get this, very disappointed when the partner doesn't heal the wounds, but the partner may not be aware of what the wounds actually are. And it's the same with children, actually. We do it with children all the time. I'm really aware of being my mother sometimes with my kids. I hear myself saying the same things. My mother's very make do amend. She was very like, you just weren't allowed to be ill. There was no illness in our house, all right.
Mhm.
Not allowed to be off school. So I'm the opposite in the sense I'm very fluid about that. but I'm not good at illness. You know, it's really interesting. I'm like, what if someone gets ill? I'm kind of really not great at it. I kind of go, oh, you're fine. You know, no, you'll be great.
Yep. And
No,
before we can get to being good at it, we've got to cross the rainbow bridge, which is the pain barrier of where we never had it. So it's like, in order for me to be good at something that I never got, I have to walk through what feels like a burning bridge. So,
yes,
so I have a friend that comes round with her daughter on a Sunday, and we have a Sunday dinner, and I do a roast, and a roasted chicken, etc., etc., etc. And the first few times of doing that, it was great. I really enjoyed it, and then I
yes,
started to not enjoy it as much, and I started to question why, and I started to avoid it, and I started noticing that I was stepping back a bit from it, and it's because I never had that. I never had a Sunday family dinner with mother, father,
yes,
children. We sat at the table, and it started to be what became and what was offered as an inclusion. It actually started to cause it and bring up pain in me, because in
mm,
order for me to sit at that table and carve the chicken, I had to sit with the pain that I never had that. Does that
yeah,
make sense?
yes, no, absolutely,
And still working through that,
yeah,
but at least, God, thank God, I'm aware of it. I mean, so many people aren't aware when that wound comes up, and they blame it.
yeah, yeah, and then it's difficult. I mean, my mum always says to me, "Why are you so nice to your kids?" Like, let's have a think about that. It's not that she wasn't nice, you know. She was a post-war baby, and blah 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 blah. So it's not about. I've always said to people, it's not about demonizing your parents. They did the best they could do given the circumstances they were in.
Of course
Generally,
they did. Of course
not
they
all,
did.
but generally, So, and I say that to clients. It's not about demonizing your parents, because for lots of clients that's awful. The myth of the mother, our mam, the myth of the mother is huge in our society. We can't say bad things about our mothers because they're birth givers and they love us and they try their best, and it's very painful. It's very painful. So how's that got to do with now? I suppose,
Because it's bringing it up.
yeah, it's bringing it up now because mothers take care. The myth of the mother is mummies take care of us, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I've got my kids here, like I said, shoving vitamins down them. It might make no difference at all. I've got no idea if massive amounts of vitamin C will make any difference whatsoever. But it makes them feel safe. I could be giving them a placebo. It wouldn't matter. I'm on it. I know what I'm doing. Here we go. Here's Vit D. Here's Vit C. Here's some zinc. There's some magnesium. Eat that up. Drink that fresh orange juice I've squeezed for you, and it makes them feel safe and
Of course
secure.
it is.
And that's what mothers do. And that's why this is another leap. That's why I think Germany is doing very well because they've got mummy. We've got, well, I was about to say we've got sort of hopeless daddy, a bit bumbly daddy, but someone said no. Boris Johnson's like the uncle you put in the corner, who's got the party hat on a bit wonky. I think we all feel a little bit like it's all a bit out of control. We don't have any.
Absolutely.
This is what's happening. This is what we're doing. You're going to be okay. This is where we're heading. That's how we're going to get out of lockdown. This is how it's going to be. So
Excellent.
we're flailing around,
Mhm.
thinking, oh, well, I'll go to the garden centre then. I don't really know what to do.
Yeah. And we spoke very briefly before you come on, and I went out on Saturday. And since Saturday, I have noticed an enormous difference in the traffic here. Like Saturday, it was nose to bumper, and then today on my way up from my hike this morning, I,
Mm,
I was I was entering into Lanark just after 8 o'clock this morning. There was as many cars around as there was on a normal Monday morning. And it's like, because we're not being contained, we don't have a container within the container within the container, right?
yeah.
We don't feel heard, we don't feel met, we don't feel safe. And what we're
Mm.
starting to do is drive all round about we're going over the middle lines on the road now.
But then we don't. I think we then start regressing into a lot of childhood stuff. We have a childhood that's not very contained, and a bit messy, and parents who we parent. the parentalized child thing, which is very often happens in families.
Yeah.
The parents can't really cope, so the children start
Child
becoming,
becomes a parent.
and it's all a bit messy and baggy around the edges. Then people go into fear and panic because as a baby, that's where you'd go to if you're not, held and looked after and fed and having your needs met good enough. Is what they call it, say a good enough parent. Everything gets very frightening, and
And
then
that's coming up for a lot of people and they don't know it. Nobody's doing these little live videos and talking about it. And actually, this is how I feel. And,
yes, I mean, I had a client who was absolutely terrified. She was, and she was making herself ill because I'm very well. You're into this because you've done work with Andrew. I'm very, very, very people. If you get very, very anxious, your body and actually beginning to have panic attacks and asthma. She was terrified. And in the end, we really worked through the fear. What's at the bottom of the fear? And it ends up being, I'm going to die here alone in my flat and no one will know. So I said, okay, get sick. You're not going to die instantaneously with this. No, it's a slow thing. If you get ill, I will drive up the motorway and I will pick you up and I will take you back to my house. And I genuinely meant that. I didn't, I genuinely meant that because I care about my clients. And okay, I'm crossing a million boundaries, but there's points.
Oh, please.
Boundaries, sorry, there are points at which forget boundaries. Actually, this person needs to go up the motorway and put her in a room in my house because she's terrified and she's sick. No one's going to look after her, and she's not old. That's what I'm going to do. And it completely changed how she felt about it. That she felt seen and met. Completely, and now she's flying. She's fine, totally fine. And she said to me, it was when you said that, and I knew you meant it. Totally changed for me.
I'm here. I'm here for you.
Yeah, and I'm going to do it. I'm not going to let you die alone. Because that's not that's what human beings do for each other. Really, we shouldn't. We should be. It's a time to be kind and helpful and generous, and not just to strangers or clients, but also to our families and to our partners. It's not going to go on forever. We've only got to be nice for a little bit. But that's very difficult for people that are feeling not very regulated and their emotions all over the place. And there's been a lot of shouting and nastiness. People getting very cross with other people and phoning up the police and saying, my neighbours walked their dogs twice today.
Yep. Yep.
And again,
my next door neighbour's a police officer. My next door neighbour's a police officer, and we were chatting over the fence yesterday. And he was telling me some of the phone calls that he's had. Wait for this one. A guy was painting his fence in his property, and some of the paint went round onto the wood and slats at the back, and he called the cops. And it's back to that. We're in the middle of a pandemic.
Yes.
It's like, let's think rationally. Does the police need to be going to someone that's got a respiratory problem that needs put in an ambulance, that needs taken for COVID treatment, or do the police need to be taking up their time with my painted fence right now?
But I think that's something to do with the infantilized state. Isn't that begging for someone in authority to take control?
Yes, because they're feeling very vulnerable and they don't know what to do with it, so they're blaming and projecting that onto the fence.
Yes.
And the paint.
Yes.
But it's actually, I feel really vulnerable right now. I feel really scared right now, and I need a good parent to come in of authority and regulate and manage this situation right now because I don't have the capacity to deal with it.
So that gets the rebel thing, doesn't it? So when the person calls up and says, my next door neighbours walked their dogs twice, part of it is, I really wish I had the chutzpah to walk my dogs twice.
Yeah.
Part of it is fear, which is, well, what if everyone starts walking their dogs twice? Then where are we all going to end up with all these people walking dogs willy-nilly, just what they want to? Everything's out of so it's a combination. And then if I've got to stay in and only walk my dogs once, everyone's got to stay in and only walk their dogs once.
Yeah. Control.
And they want the police to go, okay, I'll go and tell them that they're bad and wrong and naughty. And of course, the police are like, I can't, we don't have the time or energy for this. But it's really interesting.
There's a lot of stuff up, and it's just sitting watching it and being aware of it. And I think through things like, like even people that they go into an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, or they get into the fellowship meeting, and for the first time they go in and they hear somebody say, I hide my alcohol in the light fitting. And the person goes, goodness, I'm not the only person that does that.
Yeah.
So I think it's really good for people to hear our failings and what we're struggling with and what we're finding difficulty with.
I mean, it upsets me and it makes me angry. Well, yeah, it does. I think it does make me angry when I hear people say things like, don't be afraid. Well, why not be afraid? Of course we're afraid. Like it's. I feel it's difficult when we're not allowed to say I'm afraid. I'm out of control. I feel really nervous. I'm really triggered. I feel tearful. I can't sleep. The idea that somehow isn't a valid response to me is extraordinary. Of course, it's a valid response. It's frightening. It isn't just the COVID thing that's frightening. It's everything feels frightening.
Of course it does.
It's a totally valid response to say I'm frightened and I'm tearful and I'm terrified and I'm panicked and I hate my husband and I want to whatever. It's fine. And my children are driving me nuts. And I feel like I'm failing at homeschooling because my pet, my theory for everyone is don't talk to anyone else about it. As soon as you say to another parent, how's the homeschooling going? Somehow you'll be in shame, because they'll always be doing a better job than you. Oh, we've been up at 7 and they've done, Schrodinger's cat by, 10, and you haven't even managed to get anyone up. You will immediately go into sort of shame and competition, guilt.
Yep.
So just don't discuss it with anyone else. Just check in with yourself. What are you okay with? Just check
in. Just check in. What is this? Are we doing enough? Are we together? Are we safe? Have we got enough to eat? Are we managing? Because even for a lot of people holding down, paying their rent and they've now not had their wages for a month.
Yes.
What's more important, getting your kid through reading the first stage of Shakespeare, or actually managing that you're going to eat tonight? It's like, what's the most important?
Yes, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So there's enough on people without having to worry about they filing their homework.
Am I doing enough homeschooling? Is my kid's already going to be 3 months behind? It's like, well, if you don't eat and you get evicted, you're not going to have a home. So what's more important? It's actually just sitting down, and so many. I've had a lot of calls about one from a guy, but predominantly it's been women that are doing exactly what you say. They're comparing themselves to what the person round the road's doing, and they're going out and they're using their 1 hour exercise to go on a field trip and look at insects and animals, and they've incorporated making dinner into home economics. And
yes, and there's a lot of good stuff out there. And remember, the internet is your friend. There's this fear around kids being online. Right now, the internet is your friend. So now kids have got really mixed messages, which is don't be online, be online, be online. It's very mixed messages. But there's so many resources and stuff online. History lessons and maths lessons. It's fantastic. It's absolutely brilliant that people do that.
Yeah.
So I mean, what have I realised the last few weeks? I've realised that I lead my life at a frenetic pace. I really do zoom about, and I do, and that actually I really want to think about that. How I want to work and just be after this. Do I really want to stuff so much in my day? Because there's a panic. There's a panic around earning money. I mean, money is a huge topic. We haven't got time for that, but money is massive. And I think money's really coming up for people right now. How do I earn money? How do I get money? Is my business going to survive? And there are
all the meaning that's been placed on money. And I've been questioning my daily reflection is, what if the country goes bankrupt? What if the Queen's head is no longer a currency that I get to crunch up, put in my pocket, because when I pull a wad of money out of my pocket to pay for a meal, I feel important. It gives me a sense of authority. What happens if that disappeared?
I mean, I've really, I'm saying terrible things to my daughter, terrible things. I said to her things like, if you meet a penniless artist, don't marry them. No, I have. I'm like, actually, I've worked so hard. I have worked so hard.
I know you have.
I don't want her to work as hard as I've worked. I want her to be able to have kids if she wants to have kids. I want her to be able to enjoy her kids. It's very untrendy to say all this, we're not supposed to say any of this. But actually, I just don't want her to have to go to work all the time. And what she wants to do, stay at home and be with her kids. I just think all this stuff has really come up for me about how hard I work, and I think I've worked very hard to keep us all financially independent and to keep myself financially independent. And I've started really thinking about that. And I've started
thinking, important.
I mean, I don't spend a lot of money. I really don't, actually. And I was saying that to the kids, like, how can we save some money, or how can I maybe not work so hard? And they were saying, but we don't really spend anything. We don't really. But there's always
bills.
There's always corners you can cut.
And of course there is. And people are starting to think of that. I think it's not just you and I having this conversation. I think people are starting to think about, how can I have a better work-life balance? How can I, in this pause and in this reset,
yes,
if you can go beyond the fear, at the other side of fear, there's a lot of creativity. And
yes,
it's how do you tap into that creativity? How do you, for me, what I've been realizing is how much I've been in my head, how much I've been running about in my head.
Okay.
And it's like this pause has certainly quietened me and made me feel a lot more gentle on myself, which to me means my heart's starting to bloom a little bit. It feels as if my heart's starting to open to nature, to my surroundings. And I've wondered even this morning, what would a world look like if my heart and mind was coherently communicating as one rather than two separate entities? What would my life look like? What would I do?
Yes. Yeah. I was watching a baby the other day, and I was just thinking how embodied they are. They're all about their bodies. They're fascinated by their fingers. They're fascinated by their toes. It's this magical thing. They've got this physical body. And I think we've got very out of touch with that sense of sort of wonder.
Yeah.
People were saying, oh, people die. I was like, well, of course they die because their hearts are 85 years old, and they get stress and strains. So I've really started checking in with what's going on in my body. How am I feeling? Where am I aching? What's happening? I actually feel really, really healthy. My body feels pretty healthy, and you know, and I say that to my teenage clients, who have a lot of body issues. And I'm like, well, have you thought about what's inside your body? Let's think about what your organs are. When you say body, have you thanked your heart and your lungs and your liver and all these things that are working so hard for you? We only think of ourselves as what we look like on the outside. And I think now with this, we are thinking about our insides because we're worrying about lungs and how our work and how our heart keeps pumping.
How can we take a lot more personal responsibility for our body and not rely on an external system, the NHS or doctors or nurses, to look after us? What can we do for ourselves today that's going to make us manage this illness better?
Yeah, and then if you do it, sometimes yourself up about it's like I listen to women and they say, oh, I ate a chocolate eclair and I feel so guilty. I'm like, that's not something to feel guilty about. Really, that really isn't. Stabbing someone to death is probably something to feel a bit guilty about. But like eating a chocolate brownie, please don't feel guilty about that. Anyway, this is a much bigger topic, money and bodies. Huge topics.
Money, body, guilt.
And with clients, couples, the issue they find most difficult to talk about, well, two. One is sex, which no one ever wants to talk about because
Nobody wants to talk about sex.
about sex generally. And I always say we need to talk about sex because otherwise we're avoiding a significant part of your relationship. And the other one is money. Money, people find it very difficult, and I find it difficult. And when people say how much do you charge, I find myself muttering and going, "Oh well, you know, I just, I just find it really hard." You know. So anyway, and it's made me.
Great subject. I think that's for next time. I think that's a great subject.
It's for next time, but it has also made me think about how, you know, how I might like to, if I can, shape my life post this. And money is a big thing about that. And how I
Huge.
feel about it and how I manage it. I mean, I'm like a dodo about it. I don't even look at my bank accounts because I'm so terrified about what's there. It's terrible. It's pathetic. I'm like a
But
baby.
you're not alone.
I feel like when people say, "Could you pay me online?" I want to go, "No," because then I've got to log in. And if I log in, I've got to look at my money. And I don't want to look at my money. So I just don't want to do that. It's ridiculous.
Snap. Exactly the same. I'm laughing inside.
Are you?
I've got two. I'm exactly the same. I've got two accounts, and I've got one account that I don't mind looking at, and I've got another account that, like, all the direct debits and stuff like that come out of.
That one.
I don't go there.
Yeah, I'm like,
But unfortunately, the credit card that I'm using at the moment is associated to that account that I don't want to look at. So, but I want to look at the credit card to see where we're at with that. But I can't look at the credit card because the bank. Oh goodness, first world problems. But it's so constrictive.
Yeah, it's. I mean, yes, I know what you mean, but it's about something, isn't it?
It's about something deeper.
About, you know, I don't really want to take control of that. It's far
No,
too.
I don't want to take responsibility. I don't want to be accountable.
Yeah. And then I might have to think about what I charge, and then I just When people,
What am I worth?
I
What
feel
am I worth?
no, I don't really know how much I charge. I don't know. You tell me. You know, it's not. It's not contained.
God, that's so true. Oh, just pay me what you can afford. Just pay me what you think it was worth. Just
Yeah.
pay me. You value me rather than me having to value me, would you?
You're handing it over to them.
Yeah. Can you value me? Because I can't do that.
Exactly. So it's got to stop that.
Good. So are we going to catch up again in the weeks to come?
Well, it's saying sometimes I don't really value what I do, and I do value what I do. I've trained really, really hard.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Not valuing. That could be the topic of our next talk. Not valuing.
Not valuing yourself.
Not valuing ourselves. I've really enjoyed speaking to you. Thank you very much.
Nice to speak to you.
Thank you for giving me your time. I really appreciate it. I do. I value that. So I hope you have a lovely afternoon. And there you've just set yourself up for the next one, which is valuing ourselves. Sex.
Issues.
We'll have loads of people. We should do that. We should do that at like 7 o'clock at night.
And the one thing I can talk about is sex. I find money way more difficult. Sex I can talk about. Sex I'm fine with, and I'm very happy to talk about that with my couples. Money I find very difficult.
Okay, so we're going to be talking about money and sex next time, and how to value ourselves.
Take care.
You have a great day.
And you.
Say hi to Hambledon for me. God bless. You take care.